my abstract was written before I actually did the reading and research and wrote the paper, so there's a couple of small changes. And they're surprising, and they have made this a much more rich and interesting paper, as it turns out. So originally I said, and this holds, I'll tell you where it breaks down, but the common feature of self-reports of psychedelic experiences, as David Luke talked about, is this communion with entities of various sorts. Though the entities are variable and sometimes self-transforming and constantly changing, the psychedelics themselves are often referred to as a woman, as a female. So ayahuasca is a woman. Salvia is a woman. Mushrooms sometimes, but their phallic shape kind of diverts that, I think. And this is a sacred feminine. This is some sort of a goddess in some forms. Now, I put in my abstract, however, this association does not hold in ethnographic contexts. And I'll tell you, that's where I got it wrong. And this is where this paper is going, so we'll just keep that in mind. Now, I said I was also going to explore specifically Salvia divinorum and ayahuasca, in their cultural context, but this is going to become a little bit more general. So I'm going to talk about how these relate to the shadow. Now, in trip reports that you find online everywhere, my research subjects as well, this she comes up. These are all illustrations by various people on various psychedelics representing them as the feminine. You've got ayahuasca, Salvia divinorum, and I'm pretty sure this one is LSD, even though it looks typically ayahuasca. But there is this sense of goddess encompassing what's coming through the world. In my own experiences, I've had these women in my experiences as well. In cosmopolitan, now this is a dodgy word, but it's no more dodgy than the West, no more dodgy than the economic North. So cosmopolitan, you kind of get what I'm talking about. Trip motifs include very consistent aspects that associate with the feminine in a lot of ways in our culture. So we've got dealing with emotional imbalances, becoming emotional and dealing with that, personality work, introspection, inner exploration, spiritual development, unconditional love and acceptance, a balancing between the male and the female generally, death and rebirth, with birth being a female aspect, loving without judgment, and various ecological aspects. However, let's go down to the shamans in the Amazon, and you've got becoming the ancestors and setting up culture. You've got supernatural warfare. You've got healing, but it's related to witchcraft, fighting witches and sorcerers. You've got divining, but it's usually criminal and antisocial behavior. It's being a cop. And or finding the baddies, or entering the spirit world. And there you got the death and rebirth, which is another sort of thing mapped on here. Now, knowing this material is why I said it didn't hold in ethnographic context, which is a little bit more subtle approach. I'm finding what is feminine is of cultural definition. And these things in the Amazon, ayahuasca is a mother, the mother of tobacco, the mother of other things. So this is a feminine that looks very masculine to our European eyes. Now, where does this come from? And how does it go? This is going to be a very, very broad stroke overview of a particular approach in anthropology, essentially evolutionary, social evolutionary approach. But I think this is where some of this is starting to come out, these differences in the masculine and the feminine. We started out as a primate, a non-human primate, and then up through, say, 98% of our existence as anatomically modern humans lived in what we would call band-level organizations, small groups of family sizes, or a couple of families together. Now, what characterizes these communities is relative equality, generalized resource sharing. Men hunt and women forage, but generally the community's small enough that the sharing doesn't need to be targeted. I don't have to remember who I shared with because it'll all come around. And division of labor is an integrative force to make sure everything gets done. You have food, you have childcare, you have vegetable matter, you have meat, and these types of things. And then socially, we ate the apple of knowledge and left the Garden of Eden, and populations rose. And in this basically American school of evolutionary anthropology, we call the next social grouping a tribe. And these are groups in a couple of hundreds. This is typically what you find in the Amazon. These are groups that are so big that these dense face-to-face interactions no longer are possible. I can't have the same relationship with everybody in the community. And sharing of limited resources becomes something that you note. If I happen to catch a tapir, I can't share it with everybody. So I pick who I share it with. It's probably somebody who shared something with me. And you get what's starting to call, it's a reciprocal trade, gifting relationship, but it's called balanced reciprocity as opposed to generalized. I know who owes me, and I know who I owe. And there is this sort of keeping a tablature of this. Now, the vegetable resources are still just as plentiful and easy to find. They're seasonal, you know when they're happening. And at this time becomes this sort of rise of male power, and I think it has to do with this limited resource and sharing network building through sharing, that it ceases to be something particularly accessible to women because their resource is generalized. And there's no real need for sharing. Now, this economic and trade network, power network thing leads to what's known as a big man in the literature, because there are no big women in these cultures. We have not found any evidence of that. And so men's work takes on a different social meaning and valuation of women's work. Intertribal warfare, on the other hand, which does start happening, these groups are big, they're fighting for the same resources, makes it very obvious that men really aren't that necessary. You just need a couple to reproduce yourselves. And so this economic power and ascendancy has to be related to a rhetorical device of men being important. And I think in some ways, some of the warfare is related to that. So you've got a rhetorical thing starting up with, and this economic resource stuff coming up. It gives men a sense of social ascendancy at this point. And, where are we? Good. Male power seems to have been established at this point and taken off up until our big modern state societies. Sherry Ortner wrote an article called Are Women to Nature as Men Are to Culture?, trying to understand the symbolic realm of this differential power, differential social aspects. And the idea is that the feminine is nature. It looks like they're going to, hopefully, no. There's supposed to be a lot of pictures here. But you have this idea that women are this broader natural thing and something of an outside cultural force. This is a lovely tree that looks like a woman. I had a root that looked like a breast. I had a painting of a woman in the nature, various Georgia O'Keeffe flowers. Sorry, they're not here. But to make this point, but the idea is that what is feminine, and in general it seems to be defined as somewhat unpredictable, dangerous, remarkably undervalued, unconstrained, but ultimately unmasculine. And this is nature. what we have to keep out. Now, from this very early stage, culture is masculine, becomes this masculine realm, and men have developed culture, probably will continue to develop culture in their own image, as this selection of cultural artifacts from all different times attests. And, excuse me. Now this is generalized and anatomical. Now, this is a big structural thing about male and female, but what is male and female is culturally variable. So here we've got a Wadabi man with his nice pink, what is that? I can't think of the brand, but yeah, compact, becoming very painted up, makeup. They do these dances to get women as mates. Now, all the men line up, they flash their eyes, my daughter says flashes their eyes, I can't think of the, what we would actually say. And they dance around, the women pick the men they will have. Now, the role of men in this society isn't completely an upside down version of what we have here. There's still, and there's definitely male ascendancy. It's just this sort of iconography that looks very feminine to us. On the other hand, we've got the Shambuli, the only picture I can find of the Shambuli. This is a Shambuli woman who Margaret Mead described this culture as the gender roles completely and utterly reversed from our expectation. The men are frivolous, they wear makeup and decorate themselves. The women are the financial advisors, the power holders of various sorts. They hate childcare. This image is apparently supposed to show that. She's sort of scowling. But traditional people tend to scowl for photographs. I'm not sure exactly what that's about. We did too back in the Victorian era as well. So it's maybe rare and important in this idea of importance. But still, men are ascendant in terms of power as a more subtle reinterpretation, re-understanding of materials. So this idea of what the feminine is again, much more a sense of not masculine. And in a culture more related to us than the Chambuli, in India, this is a feminine spirit, Kali, with death, heads, arms, stomping down warfare, various representations. My favorite representation is the multitasking modern woman, Kali. And I think multitasking, as an aside, is an attempt to hold women down. You're great at multitasking. Be proud of it. Do 3 jobs. As David Kinsey says about Kali, this figure of Kali conveys death, destruction, and consuming aspects of reality. As such, she is also a forbidden thing.